Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I actually have in multiple sample forms, and it's an ink exclusive to the Netherlands. It is Akkerman's. It's number 23, I'm going to butcher this, Bekakt Haags. I don't speak Dutch, I barely speak English. Yes, so the two samples I got were these. This was actually the second sample I got. I got sent some by the wonderful original mysterious benefactor. He sent me some in a couple vials. As you can tell, I burned through that whole vial. But I also got some in this little soy sauce packet from a sushi dinner. It was washed out, they assured me. This is from the wonderful Belgian benefactor who sent me 3 little fishies of Akkerman ink, and this was one of them. And I think I actually got this one first. But, yeah, as you can tell, I've actually used a good little bit of it. So, I actually quite enjoy this ink. It's a very nice brown. So, here we go. Bekakt Haags. I just butchered that. I apologize to anyone who ever spoke Dutch ever. Now, 2 pens I used were these. This is a Nemosine? No. It's a Singularity. And this is a, double checking, yes, this is a 0.8 stub. So it's kind of a medium stub. Sorry. As you might be able to tell, you cannot see through those tines at all. They are very tightly pressed together. Now, I keep I actually have 4 of these things, 2 in a 0.8, 2 in a 0.6, and they have all been very dry, and I intentionally keep them that way because even though I generally prefer my pens a bit wet, sometimes it's good to have a dry pen. So, we have sort of a very dry medium stub, and then we have this. This is a Knox Avicenna. Now, this is actually a very, very moderate fine nib, maybe not quite an extra fine, but very close, and I just want you to see this. Can you see where the feed is pulling away from the nib? See that? The space? Well, no matter what I do, I can't quite get that to fix itself. In fact, every time I've tried, bad things have happened, and yeah, so the only way that this pen will flow, like get ink to flow through, is if it's flowing very wet. Luckily, this pen is very wet. It is very wet, so even though it is a fine nib, it's going to be the, and a quite fine nib, it's going to be the more aggressive of the two. And you'll see just how much I mean in a moment. Now, let's look at some comparisons. Here is, I'm just going to call it 23. Here is 23. And here is Diamine's Chocolate Brown. Quite similar. This one's maybe a bit richer. It's intensely saturated as an ink. Here is Private Reserve's Chocolate Brown. This one is a little bit different. This one has a touch more red. Next is Graf van Faber-Castell's Hazelnut Brown, which is a bit lighter, and again, I think has just a little bit more red to it. And lastly, Noodler's Walnut, which is my brown. It's almost my ink, like it's one of my favorites. It is a wonderfully rich and saturated brown. It has great color. And Bekakt Haags is also a wonderful brown, but there's something just a little bit fundamentally different about it. As you might be able to tell, Walnut definitely has a little bit more red in it. This one has a little bit more gold. This one, while Walnut has a very good bit of saturation in it, there's plenty of ink in that ink, Bekakt Haags, or at 23, very richly saturated. It's an intense brown ink. Now, bear with me while I zoom in. Alright, Chromatography. Now, the one on the left with the little D in the corner, that is the one that I let dry, which, yes, is not how you're supposed to do it, but I feel like it's taught me some things over the years. This one is the one that I did the way you're supposed to, where you put the line of ink and essentially instantly drop it in the water. You can tell where that initial drop was put. There is a line of demarcation, and actually gets a little bit lighter afterwards, and then you sort of get into this nice soft brown. And I hope this will come through. You get these little hints of red in spots up through here. Now, this one that I let dry, dried for however long it took this test to dry after I dunked it in water, which is maybe 8 to 10 minutes. And as you might be able to tell, the line got a little bit darker. This area is a bit more bare, and I feel like the red kind of consolidated more up at the top. So, chemical tests, for lack of a better word. Now, as you might see here, water test, or I should say the test with water, definitely got it moving, but also kind of made a mess, because it is intensely, richly saturated, so adding water is just kind of like moving the ink component, the pigments, or whatever you want to call it, around. So, it's not exactly waterproof, and it's definitely not mess-proof. Now, 1/3 bleach solution, I thought this was rather interesting. I hope you can see this. It did not completely break it down. In fact, it broke it down very little. It changed the color a little bit, but it didn't really get rid of it. It didn't obliterate it. And if anything, it actually sort of made parts of it fully sink in. Thought that was fascinating. Now, ammonia pen flush really, really got all the parts of it moving. It also started to affect the paper greatly, so I had to sop it up. And when I did, I think I actually like pressed some of the ink back into the paper. Hydrogen peroxide, I don't even know what to call that. It did weird stuff to the paper. I have no answers. There you go. Alright, paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. I hope you can see this. It is a wonderful, rich, intense brown. Fantastic shading. And as I warned, even though that is a very moderate fine nib, it is flying out at that nib. I mean, this is an intensely wet pen. So, yes, moderate fine, 27 seconds to dry. Now, I'm not all that surprised because this is a slightly wet flowing ink. This is extremely dense paper. Intensely saturated. Yeah, I mean, all the things add up. It makes sense. It's still a little crazy to think about, but yeah. And I just want you to see the smear, the sheer density of color in those smears. Now, at 0.8 stub, which is generally quite dry, you can still see that it was putting down a good bit of ink and took 20 seconds to dry. Now, because that wet fine is just putting down so much ink, we're not going to get the same degree of shading as we're going to see in the stub, just because the hard line edge of that stub is going to sort of drag the pigment around and give you more opportunities to see the different variants of color. But yeah, we do get some shading in the fine. But yeah, it's quite well behaved. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo. I see there's no sheen, and I don't know if I'm going to get this on camera. Do you see that just right here? There's almost like an extra shininess to it. It's like a green gold kind of thing. It's hazy. We get that in the wettest parts. So I don't know if that's sheen, but it's something very like it. No bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo. Water test, yeah. We can see that there was something there. Kind of like the chromatography implied. We're going to have this sort of like soft, dusty brown that doesn't want to release. But everything else is. So it's going to make a big, big mess. It's going to dye the page. It's going to make that not the easiest thing in the world to recover, but there is something there. And because that fine was just putting down a sheer, intense volume of ink, there is going to be more left to recover. Oops. Next up is Fabriano, Echo Qua. It's an 85 gram per square meter paper. The more I use it, the more I love it. It's really fantastic. It's able to handle inks that other papers can kind of buckle under. Highly recommend it. Yeah, that extremely wet, moderate in size fine took more than 30 seconds to dry. And often I don't count beyond 30 seconds because I don't have the patience of a saint. But that 0.8 stub, which is generally pretty dry, still took 22. Again, I just want to show you the sheer density of this ink. How much ink is in that ink. Again, we have some great color. And again, I don't know if this will show up. We have that sort of hazy green gold sheeny-ishness where it's laid on very heavily. And again, that stub really brings out the widest breadth of shading. We do get some in the fine, though. In the fine, because it's laid on so heavily, we get a very deep, rich, dark brown. Here I say the flow is maybe 5.5. It might be a 5.5, but it also could be a 6, because, again, that stub is generally quite dry. So, it's here or there. No bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen, if that is not sheen. So very well behaved in that regard. And much again, made a mess. A little bit wants to remain, and again, since that fine is putting down just a crazy volume of ink, more is going to remain there. But then you add water, and it's just sort of going to give the pigment somewhere else to go to sort of spread around into. So yeah, you're going to get a bit of a mess. You might be able to recover it, who knows. How determined are you? And next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. I feel like everyone kind of knows this stuff at this point. And we kind of get more of the same. We get lovely, rich, intense color. We get great shading, especially in the stub. That fine took forever and a half to dry, by which I mean 26 seconds. And the stub took 18. Again, very intense, rich saturation. Very pronounced shading. And I quite like the color. And I almost feel like I should say colors, because we do get a soft tan. We do get into sort of like a, I don't know, like a well-oiled leather brown down to like almost a chestnut without the reddiness to it. It's very lovely. Yeah, again, no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo. And I don't know if I can call this sheen because it's sort of this, come on camera. It's just sort of this hazy, like greeny, goldy thing going on in the absolute wettest parts. And in some areas where it's laid on heavily, it almost touches black. I mean, it gets so dark if you lay it on heavy enough. And again, water test, where you put down a lot, barest little bit will remain, but a lot of it's going to wash out. It's going to make a mess. But yeah, no bleed, no feather, no echo, no sheen. Next up is Tomoe River paper, which is known for drawing out shading and sheen and dry times and echo, and we kind of get all of that. Now, this is a cream paper, whereas the other ones are white. And I don't know if I'm crazy, but I feel like the cream paper, if anything, is bringing out the tan. Whereas this stuff, it's sort of like what little red there is in it, it's sort of more obvious. Here it sort of brings out some of the gold and tan undertones, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me, or maybe it's not coming across on camera, but still. Yeah, we do get epic dry times. That very wet, almost an extra fine, European extra fine, took 40 seconds to dry, and just look at that smear. I intentionally left extra room because I knew it was going to be a big smear, and it still managed to leave the page. That dry 0.8 stub took 24 seconds. Again, we have an insane breadth of shading, and I really hope, there we go. Kind of, ish. Do you see that? The like hazy, shiny, sheeny thing going on? But anyways, the shading, again, most noticeable in the stub. You can see it in the fine, but mostly that just brings out the really rich, dark color. Now, there's no bleeding, no feathering, no spread. You would expect not to see that because that's Tomoe River. It's magical if it doesn't do that. However, this is a fairly dark brown, and this is extremely thin paper. It's 52 grams. So it's practically half the width of Clairefontaine. And this is a very dark brown, and especially in like that almost extra fine where it's laying down a great deal of ink, where it's going on very dark, you might get some echo. So yeah, if that's something you're sensitive to, be aware of it, because I mean, yeah. I mean, it does get almost black in spots where you lay it on heavy enough, but yeah. Anyways, the water test. Now, Tomoe River loves to let ink slide away when you add water, and it kind of did, to the point where when I went to mop up the water, it sort of took most of that ink with it. It didn't dye the page much, and what's left behind is barely there. And again, since that very wet fine was laying down more in the first place, more remains, but it would not be fun to try and recover. That would be difficult. Now, usually for the 3 more absorbent papers, I use the smaller nib. Now, of course, that almost extra fine is technically smaller. However, it is so freaking wet that I couldn't, in fairness, use it to properly test these papers, because that's why I use the smaller nib. I'm sort of going easier on these papers. So I use the 0.8 stub because it's fairly dry, although I did use the fine to help write the name. Now, this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. This stuff is garbage on legs, practically. It's just terrible. Quite possibly the worst paper I've ever encountered, and please believe me, that is certainly saying something. However, it didn't do too bad here. Now, I just want to show you. So here's the stub on Tomoe River, and here it is on 20-pound. We do have some spread, I'm not going to deny that. However, we don't get a lot of feathering, if you'll notice. In fact, we get almost none. We get a little bit of woolliness. We don't get a lot of shading. We've lost a lot of the shading, and it sort of evened itself out to a medium brown. It's not as dark as it was, but I still find I quite like the color of brown that we're left with. Now it took 2.5 seconds to dry. We do have some show through, but if you look, you'll see just how opaque and hazy and light all of those areas are. Now what does that mean? It means it got nowhere near coming out the back, except for that, but that's that super wet fine. So yeah, this stub, the dry writing stub, actually managed to do all right. Would it be super comfortable to write on the back? Maybe not, but I'm really sensitive, so... But it's a really nice color, right? It's a really nice solid brown. And again, more absorbent papers tend to draw the ink in, make it harder to wash out, which is definitely what happened here, because this is by far the darkest water test we've seen by a long shot. So yeah, it really drew the ink in, didn't want to let go. And I just want to point out, you see the red at the top of the chromatography? You're starting to see it here in the water test. But that sort of tan at the center is pretty still, pretty there. It's remaining kind of dark. The red is almost trying to wash off, and yes, it can kind of explode and get a little distracty. But if you really focus, I think you can read that. So if you absolutely had to recover this, I think you could. And next up is Mead Notebook Paper. This is the kind you'd find in like a spiral notebook, not the kind you'd find in like a composition notebook. And lately this stuff has been feathering like crazy. It's taking every opportunity. And we do get some feathering. So here Akkerman, which was admittedly written with that really wet fine, we are getting a lot of feathering. And in places with the stub, we are getting some little bits of feathering. However, if you've seen some of the recent tests, overall, it's really not too bad. It could be a lot worse. And again, we have an intense brown color. It's a very nice color of brown, if you ask me. 4 seconds to dry, and we actually retain some shading. The shading is not completely gone. But yes. Now, this paper is physically thinner than 20 pound. And this is a fairly dark brown ink. So we are going to get some echo or show through, whatever your preferred term for it is. However, you'll see that there is absolutely no bleed through whatsoever. Even the places where it's darkest, it is nowhere near coming out the back. It handled it very, very well. So maybe the key to this is you need a very dry writing stub. But yes, this paper is notorious for freaking out when you add water, and it kind of did. Honestly, I was expecting it to freak out a bit more, even though it still freaked out plenty on its own. But you can kind of tell the stuff at the center is trying to keep it together. And that sort of more red-brown is trying to wash away, but it is feathering and exploding in the process. So it could have gone better. Next up is Moleskin, which is terrible. Period. It's terrible. It's terrible paper. They make you pay a lot of money for it. It's not fair. I don't like it. Now, here the stub took 8 seconds to dry. And I guess we could say that we do retain some shading, but we also have a distinctly noticeable woolly texture to the writing. It's really not pleasant looking. But the feathering could be worse. We've seen crazy feathers. There is some. This is it's sort of like woolliness on steroids. It's not beautiful. And we get bleed. This is the first time really we get full-on bleed, because if you look when we bring this in, you see how some of these dots are extremely dark. Which means not only did they make it to the back, but in several places they actually made it onto the next page. Which is very, very bad when you consider that this is an extremely dry writing stub. But anyways, paper really freaked out. This paper absolutely hates water. So yes, it completely dyed the page. It changed colors. It looks like some crazy cactus monster troll thing. It's just a mess. I don't know. I would probably give up rather than try and recover that. Yeah, because that would not be a fun task. Yep, so there you go. For your consideration, Akkerman number 23, Bekakt Haags. Bekakt Haags? I don't know. And I apologize, I am one of those ignorant Americans. I try not to be, but I fail. This is an intensely saturated brown ink. It's a fantastic color. It's slightly wet. It has some near sheen-ishness on some premium papers. Honestly, it's beautiful. Actually, when my parents were at the Akkerman store in The Hague a couple months ago, I asked them to buy me a bottle of this, but they were all out. And I certainly can't blame them because it's a wonderful, wonderful ink. So yeah, there you go for your consideration from the Triple N Network. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.